What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode brought to you by the League FFB. Today, we're going to be going through my top 36 running backs here as we head into week 6 of the fantasy football season. As always, these rankings are changing and adapting throughout the week, so make sure you guys are subscribed. That way you don't miss any of those updates. But for now, this is how I'm viewing these players if we're trying to set lineups here today. So let's just not waste any more time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's start talking about these running backs. All right, so as always, I got 7 tiers to get through all 36 running backs here in today's video. As you can see, the left side labels for these tiers are how I'm going to be viewing these players if I'm plugging them into your lineup. So the guys at the top, those are the elite running back ones this week, and the guys at the bottom are just some flex plays that you could maybe plug into your lineup if you need them. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into the top tier. The top tier for me at number 1 is going to be Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs. Those are the only 2 players here in this tier. The one guy I want to talk about specifically is Jacobs. He plays at home versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are dead last against the running back position so far to start the year, giving up 30.7 fantasy points per game to that position group. I think Josh Jacobs is in a position to smash this week. Should be an awesome play for you in your fantasy football lineups fresh off the bye week. Now moving on to my high-end running back ones, I got 5 guys in this tier. So let's talk about Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Achane, and Javonte Williams sneaking into this high-end running back 1 tier this week. Not a ton of matchups to either like or dislike about this tier other than Achane, who does have a tough matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. They're only allowing 16.6 fantasy points per game to that running back group, which is the 8th best in the NFL. But the rest of these guys, Bijan, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, volume, big play, elite upside type of guys. I just don't think the matchups are as good as they were for Josh Jacobs or Jonathan Taylor, so that's why they're in the next tier. That's not a knock on the talent. These players are as elite as they come. And Javonte Williams, he gets a game on the road at the Carolina Panthers. Should be an opportunity for him to get into the end zone once or maybe even twice here in this game. So let's go on to tier 3. Tier 3 is going to be those low-end RB1s for me, and I got 5 guys in here and lots of matchups that we can talk about. James Cook at 8, Saquon at 9, Kyren at 10. I got Ashton Jeanty at 11, and at 12 I got Breece Hall. There's 3 really good matchups, 1 bad matchup. The bad matchup is going to be James Cook, who plays on the road at the Atlanta Falcons. They are the 3rd best against the running back position, only allowing 13.6 fantasy points per game. So even though James Cook has been on fire, lights out to start the year, coming off of a little bit of a bad week there in week 5, still a top 8 play, but I'm bumping him down to this low-end RB1 just because of the matchup. So the other good matchups that we have this week are Saquon Barkley, who plays on the road at the New York Giants Thursday Night Football. Now, he does have a knee injury that, could be listed as questionable. We're going to need more information about that today as those injury reports come out. But if he plays, he's still a player. I guess even if he practices today, he's still a player I'm viewing as a top 10 guy because the matchup here for the Giants, like I said, 26th in the NFL against the running back position, allowing 22.8 fantasy points per game. Should be a great opportunity for him to score some fantasy points and kind of, get back on track because Saquon hasn't been as elite as he was last year for us here this year. Kyren Williams is another player that I really like the matchup. He's on the road at the Baltimore Ravens. They are 31st against the running back position this year. That defense has been giving up a ton of points to both the wide receiver and the running back position, giving up 28.8 fantasy points per game to the running back group as a whole. Kyren coming off a big week should have the opportunity to do it again here this week as a top 10 play. And then Ashton Jeanty is one more player I like. Playing at home this week versus the Tennessee Titans. They are currently ranked 30th against the running back position, giving up 28.6 fantasy points per game. So Jeanty should be in store for a pretty decent week as well. Let's go to tier 4. Tier 4 is going to be the safe running back 2 plays. I got 7 players in this tier. I think it's the largest tier in today's video. At 13, I got Travis Etienne, followed by Rico Dowdle, followed by Rachaad White, Quinshon Judkins, Cam Scattaboo, Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, and J.K. Dobbins to round out the entire tier. And if you would have looked at this tier, 5 weeks ago, you would have said, what the hell is happening in fantasy football? And this is just where we're at right now at this point in time, man. So Rico Dowdle's a player I want to talk about. Revenge game this week versus the Dallas Cowboys, and it is a nice matchup for him as well. They are currently ranked 27th in the NFL against the running back position, giving up 24.6 22.4 fantasy points per game. Dowdle is coming off of a huge 200-yard game last week, posting TikToks about they don't know what's coming. I think he wants blood here in Dallas, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity if he is the starter again. And I am projecting him to be the starter again because I don't, have a lot of news right now at this point in time, at the time of the recording, that Chuba Hubbard is going to be pointing towards playing this week. So Dowdle, great opportunity for him to get revenge here against the Cowboys. Two more good matchups in this tier as well. Corey Krosky-Merritt is a player who has a good matchup against the Chicago Bears. Right now, they are ranked 29th in the NFL. That's that Monday Night Football game. They're giving up 28.2 fantasy points per game to the group, and Corey's coming off of a game where, he won Tom Brady's award for the best player of the day. I think JCM may be trending up right now in fantasy leagues, and J.K. Dobbins is another player I like the matchup on the road at the New York Jets. Technically on the road there in London. It's the morning game there on Sunday. It's a good matchup as well. They're ranked 25th in the NFL against the running back position, giving up 22.3 fantasy points per game, so Dobbins should have an opportunity to get into the end zone and maybe break off a couple of big plays. Let's go to tier 5, and these are the fringe running back twos, and I never thought we would be here, but at 20, it's Derrick Henry, 21, DeAndre Swift, 22, Kenneth Walker, 23, David Montgomery, 24 is Michael Carter, 25 is Jaylen Warren. That's the entire tier for me, and Derrick Henry is the player that we need to talk about. Bad matchup for him. At home here against the Los Angeles Rams, but the Los Angeles Rams are the #1 defense against running backs so far this year, only allowing 13.3 fantasy points per game to the group. I'm not expecting Lamar Jackson in the lineup. We saw how bad it was last week with Cooper Rush. The Texans stomped him. I think it's going to be a bad week for Derrick Henry again, and I don't know if we can really trust him too much. It's going to be a touchdown-dependent option in your fantasy football lineups. Michael Carter is another player I want to talk about in this tier. Took over the majority of the workload last week. I think really sent DeMercado to fringe bench territory, maybe drop territory again in fantasy football. It looks like Carter's going to be the guy leading the way until Benson is back in the lineup in a couple of weeks. On the road at the Indianapolis Colts, they are only giving up 16 fantasy points per game to the group, which is the 7th best in the NFL. Maybe a tougher matchup for Michael Carter, despite being the guy who's going to see the majority of the workload here in Arizona temporarily. Jaylen Warren's another player we should talk about. Coming off the bye, obviously he missed the week before that with the knee injury. That was the big Kenneth Gainwell week. Still questionable with the knee injury. I think he's going to play. If he plays, it's a bad matchup against the Cleveland Browns, who are second best against the running back position, giving up 13.5 fantasy points per game. So questionable start. Still a fringe running back too, somebody you could get into your lineup if you need him to. Let's move on to tier 6. Tier 6 is going to be those low upside RB3s, the low upside guys. And right now at 26, I got Alvin Kamara, I got Tony Pollard, Chase Brown, Trevion Henderson, and Ramondre Stevenson. Some names you don't really want to see here. We didn't expect to see here at the start of the year, but Alvin Kamara, hasn't been great. Kendre Miller's been getting a little bit more involved. Has a tough matchup this week. New England has been top 5 against the running back position, only allowing 15.8 fantasy points per game. Alvin Kamara is a player that if we want to see some of this upside come back with him, I think he's going to have to be a trade candidate to go somewhere else to a contending team. The Chiefs would be ideal, I think, at this point in time with what they are getting out of their running back room. Chase Brown is another player that we did not expect to be here. It is a tough matchup on the road at the Green Bay Packers, 4th best against the running back position, only allowing 15.6 fantasy points per game. We'll see how the addition of Joe Flacco helps him. Maybe a couple more checkdowns, but still, like I said, I don't think Joe Flacco is that big of an upgrade. I mentioned that on the wide receiver episode. We'll see what happens, but I know there's some Flacco stands. I just don't think he's the same guy as he was, 2 or 3 years ago when we were getting that Flacco mania there for the Colts. And then the other guys in this tier, no matchups really worth talking about, but Tony Pollard, it's just been a rough year for the Titans. The offense hasn't really been moving. They looked a little bit better last week, so maybe, they can get it going against the Raiders this week. And then Henderson and Stevenson, Mike Vrabel's driving me absolutely nuts. You have to think that Trevion Henderson has pissed off Mike Vrabel in one way or the other. I've heard rumors he doesn't know the playbook. I've heard rumors of all this other stuff. I don't care. It's just frustrating because we know how talented Henderson is, and then obviously Stevenson's sitting here fumbling the football every time he touches it. Until Mike Vrabel gets his head out of his ass, both of these guys are just low upside RB3s at best. You're trying to see who gets into the end zone. You're trying to see, who may catch a couple of the passes. It is frustrating. Hopefully in the back half of the year, as we get closer to the fantasy football playoffs and things like that, Trevion Henderson is a player who starts to emerge and take over the backfield. Sometimes it takes a while with these rookie running backs. Hopefully that's just the case here because it's driving me absolutely nuts. I I just don't know how Vrabel is not getting Henderson on the field. But with Antonio Gibson now on IR, the torn ACL, hopefully there's a couple more opportunities for Henderson. And if he gets those opportunities, hopefully he shows the elite athleticism that he has that makes him, get on the football field a little bit more. That's my Trevion Henderson rant. I know the people who have him on their teams definitely feel me. Let's go to tier 7. These are the flex plays. I got a total of 6 players in this tier for me. A ton of bad matchups in this tier. So let's go with 31, RJ Harvey, 32, Zach Charbonnet, 33, Kareem Hunt, 34, Isaiah Pacheco, 35, Kenneth Gainwell, and 36, Kendre Miller. The only guy with a good matchup in this tier is RJ Harvey. We talked about that with J.K. Dobbins. The problem is Harvey just doesn't have a ton of opportunity right now. Dobbins has been dominating that backfield, but maybe he's another guy, like we said with Henderson, can evolve a little bit more in the back half of the year and maybe become a little bit more dependable. But for now, flex play this week in a good matchup. The other guys that we should talk about are going to be the 2 Chiefs running backs, Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco. Bad matchup for both of them versus the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are currently ranked top 6 against the running back position, only allowing 15.9 fantasy points per game to the group. Right now, Kareem Hunt is getting all the goal line work. Pacheco's getting all the work in between the 20s. And then they got Brashard Smith catching the passes on those third down receiving, type of role. It is a mess. It is a mess in Kansas City, basically making all of them not reliable, unappealing, and basically just useless for fantasy football. It is tough, and I've been a guy that in the offseason, I was very wrong, folks. I was very wrong. I will admit it right now. I liked Isaiah Pacheco a lot in the offseason, drafted a lot of him in best ball. It hasn't worked out. It just hasn't worked out. The other guy is Kenneth Gainwell. Bad matchup, like I said, against Cleveland. I mentioned that with Jalen Warren. It's more of a committee if Warren's back into the offense. And then Kendre Miller, bad matchup. Mentioned that one with Alvin Kamara. Top 5 defense against the New England Patriots. Obviously, this isn't a guy who is getting the majority of the workload. They're more likely splitting the workload at this point in time. We saw about an even split last week. So not a lot of appealing options here. I will say if you watch the wide receiver episode, there's plenty of wide receivers in that final tier that I would play over these running backs. There are wide receivers that are not ranked that I would play over these running backs this week. So yeah, man, it's just not great once you get down this far, and I think that's because of buys and injuries. All right, so there you have it. That is my top 36 running backs heading into week 6. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, injury reports coming out today, tomorrow, the next day, as we get into the weekend. So stay tuned, stay updated to this channel. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. That way you see the updates when they come. Also, make sure if you found something today informative, entertaining, actionable, maybe you found something that could help you make a lineup decision this week, do me the favor, hit the like button. It is the best free way to show this channel some support, and go join our free Discord. We do have a Discord of 500 plus people that want to talk fantasy football with you 24/7, 365. Maybe talk about waivers, trades, theory, all that stuff, whether it's redraft, dynasty, best ball, whatever you got. There's plenty of people in there that want to talk with you. And like I said, it's free to join, so there is no risk in doing that. But with all of that out of the way, I have nothing else for you guys today. So I will see you on our next episode. Until then, peace out.